Hi, welcome to Healthy Little Moments. This is our new podcast called Expert Insights, where we're going to connect you with experts in various different fields in health and wellness. And today I am so excited to kick it off. This is going to be our very first episode with Hannah Castillo. She is a meditation expert, and I'm going to let her introduce herself here, but I just want to rattle off her very impressive background. She has been a mental health counselor for 24 years and counting. She has a master's in mental health, bachelor's in psychology and English. She writes meditation for many different platforms, including the Aura app, which I think is really cool. And I've listened to her meditations on Spotify, and she is amazing. And she's just a wealth of knowledge. So I'm so happy you're here with us, Hannah. Thank you so much. So I just love to turn it over to you and hear a little bit from you on your background in meditation and what you hope to share with us today.
Well, thank you for having me, first of all. You did such a great job introducing me. I'm not sure what to add. As far as my background in meditation, gosh, I've meditated for several years now consistently. And I really started meditating after I developed a chronic health condition. So I really started to try and manage some of those symptoms for myself. So I started small, built from there, and it's now a part of my daily routine.
That's amazing. And let me ask you this personal interest here. How long do you meditate for a day? Do you kind of just, is it day by day, or is it depends, or do you have a set time?
That's honestly the first time anyone has ever asked me that. It honestly varies day by day. I meditate every single morning for at least 5 to 10 minutes. So only a short meditation in the morning. And usually I pair that with some kind of movement. So I kind of have developed this morning routine that works for me. So when I wake up in the morning, I do some kind of movement first, whether that's a walk outside with my dog, which is my preferred movement, but the weather doesn't always accommodate that. And neither do my symptoms sometimes. So when I can't do that, I do a few minutes of yoga, and then I follow that with meditation every morning. But sometimes, depending on how my symptoms are doing that day with my physical health, or just kind of how my day looks overall, I will also do a meditation in the afternoon. If I have the time, I also really like to do just a few minutes. I mean, just a short meditative moments, almost maybe 3 minutes or so, to just kind of clear my mind before I start with my clients for the day. So I guess to answer your question, it's kind of small burst throughout the day.
Okay, I did not know that you were going to say that, but I love that because in Healthy Little Moments and all the content that we talk about on the blog and on the vlog is really just about, sometimes a large impact, just you need a few minutes a day, whether that's meditating or going on a 10-minute walk. And I think a lot of the people I talk to about meditation say that, well, I don't have an hour to just sit in a quiet, dark room all the time. And I'm like, well, you don't have to sit for an hour. For example, I meditate a 10-minute sessions, and that's why I was so happy to come across your 10-minute meditations on Spotify, because I'm like, that's just been my sweet spot in the afternoon when I'm like feeling like I'm crashing energetically and spiritually sometimes, even being at home with a baby. And so that has had a profound impact in my life. And I'm like, hey, it's just 10 minutes. We spend 10 times that scrolling on Instagram sometimes. So that's why I feel like
Yeah.
are really impactful. And that's what I really hope to cover today and in today's sessions. I really want to talk about kind of overcoming those hurdles and maybe misconceptions, and some of the benefits. And then most importantly, I really want to share with the audience how to get started, like how to do it. Because I think sometimes we're a little gun shy to start something new, especially like meditation maybe that seems foreign when our minds are so busy. So thank you so much for sharing kind of your journey, and especially with a chronic illness, which I think a lot of people deal with on a day-to-day basis. So if I was to kick it off and I would ask you to define meditation for someone just completely new to it, what would you say?
There's so many answers to that. I would say just very simply, it's a practice to train your attention and to train your awareness. I don't know that it has to be this very big, involved, long answer. It's just you practicing where you choose to shift your focus, where you choose to put your attention, and if you practice it, it can help you kind of achieve more of a state of calm, you know.
Yeah. And how would you say, I'm jumping around a little bit because we talked about some of the misconceptions, right, about meditation. Um, because it's just starting. But I hear a lot of people say, well, I have so many thoughts in my head, right? And I just can't be with my thoughts and I can't quiet that. So how do you guide somebody around that?
First of all, I have so many thoughts in my head too.
Yeah.
I definitely do not think that that prevents you from meditating. In fact, I believe anyone can meditate. And I think that that's probably one of the misconceptions that I struggled with meditation before I kind of revisited the idea and really committed to practicing after my physical health kind of forced that. But, I kind of dabbled in it before that in college, especially and in grad school. When my symptoms were flared up, I would kind of try to sit and meditate for a few minutes, but I would try to silently sit and meditate and quiet my mind because that's what I believe meditation had to be. And I now know that's not true.
Yeah.
And I really wish someone would have told me that. um, so those thoughts didn't have to stop for me to benefit from meditation. I don't think at all the goal of meditation is to silence every thought in your head. I'm not sure that's always possible.
Yeah.
I'm sure there are people out there who can achieve that and who can do that. And after years of meditating, sometimes I achieve that, but a lot of days I don't. A lot of days there are still thoughts running through my head, but I've gotten a lot better at not chasing them.
Hmm.
And I think that's where the practice of meditation is. Those thoughts can come through my head, but they also leave.
Yeah.
And I don't need to follow them or investigate them or let them spiral or, let them get out of control. I can acknowledge them and refocus my attention back to my breath or
Yeah.
refocus my attention back to if I'm listening to a guided meditation, which sometimes I still do.
Yeah.
I can focus my attention back to the person speaking and back to what they're guiding me to do.
You just actually sparked an idea. One of the reasons that I love guided meditations is that I have something to kind of focus in on instead of my massive to-do list because I'm a list person. So when I meditate, it's like, oh, I have to do laundry and I need to
Me
um,
and you both.
yeah. Right. It's just like there's so much. So I think one of the reasons I love your guided meditations is because your voice is so soothing and it takes me through. Maybe I recently listened to kind of a appreciation meditation, and I just kind of took me through a thought process to get me away from the day to day. And I was like, that was like perfect for what I needed that day. So that's why I like when you said it doesn't have to look one way, right? Meditation doesn't have to be one thing, and it can be different for one person every day, depending on what they need to calm themselves and their mind. And I love that.
Absolutely. And even if you're listening to a guided meditation, I mean, first of all, thank you for saying you found my voice soothing and that you benefited from mine. But that may not be true for everyone. And there are so many people out there offering guided meditations. Like I am a part of the Aura app, and there are so many coaches on that app. Um, so sometimes finding the voice that feels soothing to you, that feels comforting to you. I hope that my voice is comforting to most people, but realistically, there are people out there who are going to listen to me and be like, not for me. And I hope that that doesn't make them give up on the idea of meditation or the benefits that they could get from it, because there is someone out there that they will find more soothing and that
Yeah.
it will help them be able to achieve that.
Yeah. So, yeah, thank you for sharing that because I agree wholeheartedly. Funny story, I listened to a meditation with a gentleman with like an awesome British accent, but I couldn't focus because of the accent. And so, yeah, I guess there's a different voice and meditation
There is.
for
And
everybody.
one of the things I do on Aura is I'm also a coach on there. So I work with clients all over the world. And twice now, I've had a client from a different part of the world. And they've told me I'm not able to listen to meditations with people with my same accent. And I found that fascinating. So, one of the things that we can do is send them recommended tracks through the app when we're working with them as a coach. And they're like, please don't recommend anyone with my accent. I much prefer this accent. And I was like, how great that they have that awareness, that they know kind of this is what resonates with me, and this is what really prevents me. And I feel like it's a barrier, so they were able to give me that direction, which I appreciated. But
Yeah.
it was so interesting that they had identified their own particular accent as being
Yeah.
a no-go for them.
It's interesting. Good for them. Um, so, I want to jump a little bit to talk about your experience as a mental health counselor. I've shared with you before, I am the biggest proponent of going to counseling. I was joking with a friend the other day that I feel like 80% of people that I know that really, really need a therapist, a counselor to talk to somebody like resist it. I don't know why. I've just been coming across a lot of people like
It's a
that.
scary idea for a lot of people.
It is. But one of the biggest reasons that I love uh, counseling and the benefits of that is I remember one of my very first therapists, my favorite. I went to her for probably 8 years. She really helped me work on some like really big life things. And she actually taught me some ways to meditate throughout the day and help control some thoughts. And I thought that was so practical and something that I didn't initially expect from a therapist. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about how you work with your clients and how do you introduce meditation to them. And I know this is a loaded question, but maybe we can jump into some of the benefits that they have experienced. So I would love to hear about that.
Oh yeah, I've always taught deep breathing to my clients because I think that that is just an essential tool that we all can use. And it's also one of those things that we can do anywhere at any time. Like you don't need anything to practice a deep breath. And a lot of times when I teach that to my clients, they'll come back and say it didn't help. And I'll say, let me see how you're breathing. And typically when they do it, I'm like, okay, are we willing to try it again? Like, can we try it again right now together? And, so we'll do 3 deep breaths together. And almost always they'll go, okay, yeah, that felt different. Because I think in the moment, they're not fully intentionally breathing, right? They're doing deep breathing, like they're not, doing an intentional breath. So when I can walk them through that, they do feel different just from that 3 breaths. So I've always done that. After I kind of built my own meditation practice, I started using meditations in sessions. So initially, before I ever wrote my own, I would find like free scripts that are available online and I would read them to my clients. And sometimes they would make a recording on their voice memo in their phone. And then they would use that when they went home to help in periods of high stress. Um, Once I started writing my own, I just kind of integrated that with my own meditations. And usually they would come back and report just really profound benefits. Again, it's if I can get them to consistently practice. The more consistently they practice, the bigger benefits they report. So people with higher anxiety, more depression, started reported feeling less overwhelmed by those symptoms, more able to manage those symptoms. So like their depression didn't go away, but it felt less overwhelming for them. And so they were more able to do some of the other things we talked about and to integrate some of the other tools that I've taught them, like reframing their thoughts. Before that seemed like this huge hurdle that they just were not able to do. And now with integrating meditation, they felt a little calmer from that state and were able to kind of take a step back and practice some of the other things that we've used.
I
So
love
many of my clients now actually listen to my podcast. And sometimes they will, like one of them jokingly earlier this week was like, yeah, you came up on my Spotify Wrapped. So I was like, oh, I love that so much.
that.
But so they're using that resource now as kind of their go-to in periods of high stress. So I no longer have to record it in sessions with a voice memo. So I appreciate that. I can just say, hey, listen to this episode. But I think that it just really helps them feel more centered.
Hmm. I love that. And I wrote down gateway. So it sounds like what you were sharing is that
Mhm.
it's a gateway that allows them to just pause and actually work on the therapy that you're trying to work with them on, right? And so it allows them to just calm down.
Yeah.
to then go a little bit deeper, which I really love.
That's a great word, because it is kind of a gateway for a lot of the other tools. But it's also, I think it helps them feel more empowered because it's a tool that they have with them always.
Right.
So, especially since my meditations are shorter, like I think most of them are 7 minutes or shorter. On the Aura app, they're as short as 3 minutes. On my podcasts, they're usually, I think, 6 to 8 minutes or something. But everyone has their phone with them all the time. So, even in periods of higher stress, like at work, if they're feeling really overwhelmed or stressed during their day, they can pull that out and listen to that and feel calmer in a matter of minutes. So, I think it also helps them feel less hopeless in those periods of higher stress
Yep.
because they've got one thing they can go to. Um, for many people who know me, like the people that I work with, they'll say that hearing my voice itself is a comfort to them because they know me. So,
Yeah.
because of that relationship, it just helps provide an extra layer of comfort. Um, but I think anyone you're listening to, if you're listening to that and you're really allowing yourself that space to just take a few minutes to step back from whatever is overwhelming you in the moment, it becomes just this go-to tool that you can access anywhere.
Yeah. I'm thankful that you brought up work and that you help your clients and remind them that they have this in their fingertips, because one of the ways that I use meditation I wanted to share is I worked in corporate America in a Fortune 50 company for 17 years, and it was very stressful. There were many years where, I mean, anybody can really, any job can be stressful at points. And I remember I used to go at lunch to my car. We had a huge parking structure, and I would just sit in my car and at the time I was doing 30-minute meditations. And I would just find one on YouTube on my phone, and I would just sit there. It was actually funny because I started doing this regularly because I saw the impact. I would walk back into the office almost as a new person. Like I just was walking in the morning, like fresh, fresh to
Yeah.
tackle the second half of the day, the afternoon meetings. And as I was leaving my car, I kept seeing the same friend, coworker, leave her car too. And I was like, does she just eat in her car? And I was seeing this for weeks. And then I think I finally said something. And she said, I meditate in my car at lunch. And I was like, me too. And we were about it. And she said, at the time, she had two really little kids at home. So she went from her full-time job to another full-time job. And so she was like, this is my quiet time, and it gets me ready to, to tackle the day. And I love that story. And I think about that because now I implement that as in my day here. I don't have to be in an office to just go into my room for 10 minutes, lay down or sit down and kind of reset in the middle of the day. And that's like my favorite time to meditate. So
Oh,
I love that you talk about that with your clients, because I think work is one of the biggest stressors to many people, and to have that tool is really great.
it is absolutely. And I tell my clients a lot of times, I mean, some of the meditations that you can listen to via the Aura app or, on my podcast or even other ones on YouTube, they're short. And so I always tell them kind of jokingly, like, you can go to the bathroom for 5 minutes before anyone's going to come looking. So you can pop in your AirPods and even take space there for people who are like, I just can't walk away.
Yeah,
You can. It's about how can you best put that into your day? Where can you fit it?
exactly.
But most of us have the opportunity to take a small break somewhere. So it's just identifying where that can be.
Exactly. And so we're sharing, this is a perfect transition to kind of get into the next section, which is how, like, so, let's say somebody's listening and they're like, okay, I've heard enough about meditation over the years. How do I just get into a routine, or how should I start meditating? I don't know where to start. So I know we shared a few tidbits, right? You can meditate in your car, in your house. There's like all these apps. So if you were talking to somebody, a listener who's just like, how do I start? What would you say?
I mean, I know it sounds really cliched, but just start. I mean, it's one of those things that you have to experience. And most of the time, if I can get people to listen to a short meditation the
Yeah.
first couple of times, they'll say, I felt better. So then it's over the hurdle of, okay, I acknowledge I feel better and I feel calmer. So now we're on to a different strategy of how do we get in your routine,
Mm,
right? Because then that's where people will say, I don't have time.
Yeah.
I don't know where I can put it. I don't know how I can do this. So what I usually use with people is I use something called habit stacking with them. So I'll kind of look like, let's look at your day and let's see what you are already consistently doing. There is something in your day you do consistently, even though, people say, I'm just not a consistent person. Okay, well, there's something you consistently do. Like, no lie, I love coffee. I'm a huge coffee nut. Everyone who talks to me, meets me, I love coffee. So when I started meditating, that's what I put it with because I'm not missing my morning coffee.
I
I'm not going to.
Right.
So that's where I put meditation when I started to intentionally build that practice is I paired it with my coffee every morning because I knew I was going to show up for my coffee. So it was easy to take that, very short amount of time. And I started really small. I mean, I started with 1 or 2 minutes of just kind of listening to something guided, closing my eyes, taking a few full deep breaths and feeling that difference. And that helped. So from there, I did more, and now I do short bursts of meditation throughout the day. When I was initially struggling more with my physical health, I did longer spans of meditation during my day because I felt like that's what I needed.
Wow.
And I think for me, that's one of the things that meditation does for me is it lets me not only take that space and connect with myself, but it lets me identify what else I may need that day.
Mhm. That's powerful. I actually I like that term habit stacking. I wrote that down. I first read about that in Atomic Habits. You know that book by James Clear?
I
Um,
have not read that book, but yes, I know he talks about it in there.
it's one of my favorite books because everything was so practical. I'm like, okay, I can apply that into my life. And a big part of that was habit stacking. So
Yeah, that has been on my list for so many years. I need to just get to reading it. But I know as a counselor, that's a strategy we use a lot with clients because it is such a practical technique.
yeah,
It's just an easy way to pair things.
yeah. And I know that you also mentioned, so we talked a lot about, so now first, I guess it's habit stacking, finding time and just committing to that. And then the three different, or two different ways that I'm thinking of starting meditate is looking up maybe a guided meditation or doing some deep breathing, maybe box breathing. I'm sure you're familiar with box breathing as well.
Yeah.
That's almost like guided breathing, I would imagine, right? So it's like three different ways. Anything that we missed there is kind of good ways to
No,
start.
I mean, I usually suggest that people do start with guided meditations just because the idea of meditation seems intimidating.
Yeah,
And listening to someone guide you through that kind of removes that intimidation factor. It gives you direction when you're doing it. A lot of people say, I think I'm meditating wrong. I'm not doing it right. I,
oh,
I don't know that there's a right way.
yeah,
It's just really showing up for the practice and remembering that it is a practice. So every day it's going to get a little easier. It's kind of like developing any skill.
yeah. I like
You
that.
don't pick up an instrument and you're suddenly proficient in it. You don't learn a new language overnight. I mean, meditation is a practice. So what you're really committing is just the space and the time to practice. And if you view it that way, it helps you release some of those expectations. And I think a lot of time those expectations that we hold are what really get in the way, and that
Exactly.
lets us kind of let go of those.
Yeah, at least for that one moment in a day, because I'm big on that.
Yeah.
I'll let the expectations bleed into all other areas of my life.
But right now we're just talking about showing up for the meditation practice, right?
Oh, I love that. Thank you for sharing that. That's really helpful. And I think the most important thing, just to put a pretty bow on that, is what you've shared multiple times that you even yourself, as a meditation expert, meditate for just a few minutes to see to reap the benefits, the vast benefits of meditation. And I think that's the message that I want to get across is that you don't have to meditate for half an hour. That's how I started, and it felt a little long for me. I wish that I had started with maybe a 5 minute meditation because it felt almost overwhelming, to just do something so long. So I thank you for sharing all that and your wealth of knowledge. It's been, I was jotting down some notes. I know this is a podcast, but also a video. So for those of who are only listening, you see me with my pen jotting down notes of this really wealth of information that I will include in the blog version of this as well. So if you want to read more, I am going to get Hannah's input on the blog and just add some of this like tidbit of very valuable information in the blog for those who just prefer reading. So I am almost done peppering you with questions. I just wanted to, um, share a few closing thoughts. Maybe what's, I mean, you already shared with me the piece of advice what you wish you would have known when you started meditating, but maybe what what would you like to leave? Maybe one piece of advice or to the audience that you'd like to leave them with about meditation.
Hmm. Let's say maybe to anyone who's on the fence about trying meditation, maybe maybe giving yourself the commitment to try it for 1 week, to like make a commitment just for 1 week. I mean, we're talking about like healthy little moments, like trying to give yourself that, just that agreement. Like, okay, I'm going to do this every day, 5 minutes a day, 10 minutes a day, whatever feels good for you for 1 week. And then I'm going to just check in with myself and see,
Yeah.
like, have I noticed anything? How did that feel? Is it something I want to keep up next week?
Yeah.
How did I feel about where I put it in my day? How did that work? And just giving yourself the opportunity to kind of reevaluate. I'm a big fan of checking in with ourselves and reevaluating and keeping what works and adjusting what we need to adjust. So maybe that's a good place to start.
I really like that because especially with we're in a season of everybody talking about New Year's resolutions and everybody talks about a whole year resolution, right? So it's almost like they're committing to a year. So I really like this one, 1 week. See where it takes you. I think that's a perfect place to pause. Yeah. Okay, so I thank you so much, Hannah, for all of the really great advice that you shared with us. And I'm gonna, for the listeners, I'm gonna put Hannah's information, her website, which is Love Your Calm. I love that name. She also actually has some adorable merchandise, which I was looking at last night, and I have to order a cup because I've been drinking tea from this chipped mug, which my husband is like dying to throw away. So I will need to upgrade in honor of our very first podcast. I'll upgrade to a mug, which is also makes a great gift. I'm gonna have to order one for my best friend. And I will also link to Hannah's meditations. She's on Spotify. She's on the Aura app. That's Aura. And then of course I will put her link to her website so you can learn a little bit more about her. Maybe follow her on Instagram. So Hannah, I thank you again for your time, for your knowledge, and we're so glad that you were here with us today and our very first episode, which is going to be very memorable. So I hope everybody has a really good afternoon.